we're making a list and we're checking it twice, and we're going to find out just what Craig Conroy has to accomplish.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So today, I thought that we could take a look at the offseason to-do list of Craig Conroy and break it down a little bit, because I think it's very easy to say extensions, taking a look at your roster for free agency and nailing the draft, but there's so much more to it than that, and we'll dive into that and more on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And let's talk about the draft. Every summer, the draft comes first. Obviously before free agency, and that's when a lot of moves are made because, obviously teams want to capitalize on getting more draft picks or just making their team better really ahead of free agency and doing what they can to get that done. And I think the Flames did such a good job last year that it is going to be hard to follow that up this year. You don't have a top 10 pick. And we know that the Flames are attempting to model this rebuild after Dallas. And with that, every pick has to hit. It has to hit. It has to stick. It has to be an NHL player every single time. And, I'm just going off of just their roster as a whole right now. Jake Ottinger, Harley, Robertson, Johnston, all of those players have been fantastic for Dallas and homegrown players. Can you name 5 Flames on the current roster? Or, 2 years, 2 or 3 years, just 2, actually. Let's just do that. Draft picks that have made an impact like that in the Flames lineup. No, you cannot. You're not picking in a top 10 spot. You have to make sure you are doing the darn thing and you're doing it right and you're doing it well. And, you can still find sleepers late in the draft, late in the first round, or, think about Gaudreau, who was a 4th round pick. And then, you have Dustin Wolf. Yes, but there's a reason why those players and why those moments are so notable, because they don't happen often. We know that the Flames scouting department does struggle a little bit, or at least they have in the past. But they've also pulled off some really big steals. I think about Matt Coronado immediately, because when the Flames had that not quite mushy middle pick, but outside of the top 10, it was kind of like, okay, now what? And being able to draft Matt Coronado, who has blossomed into a great goal scorer and someone that they obviously want part of their team long term, is fantastic. And you need to find more of that. And obviously Dustin Wolf too. Like that's still recent enough for me to be like, okay, you got a generational talent right there in the 7th round, right up at the very end. And I think, you have to look at your depth, right? Yesterday we talked about the Flames depth at defense and kind of how they have to make some room for some younger players. And we're going to talk more about that a little bit next. But I think, you're good at goalie for depth. Obviously, you have Dustin Wolf. You have, I'm assuming, whoever you sign in free agency. And, they have drafted a few goaltenders as well as signed some college free agents. So, I think it's a big step there. Their biggest issue is, of course, the forward group and really players down the middle. They need to find centers, and not just any center, not like rent a center. They need to find a true 1 or 2C. And I think that the issue that they're going to run into here is, of course, you're not necessarily finding one of those in, at spot 23 or wherever they're able to get Florida's pick, or 18 with New Jersey's pick. I just don't think that's possible this year. And that's the thing too. Obviously, I'm not a scout. I don't particularly specialize in prospects or anything like that. There are a lot of smart people out there that do, and they kind of have like a bigger picture of the next 2 to 3 draft classes and what's out there. And I think this year was specifically very limited for those top centers. So maybe next year looks a little bit better. But regardless, the Flames need to figure out a way to acquire a 1C, a true 1C, and get the job done. I feel like once they have their 1C, they will be able to move this along. I think obviously Dustin Wolf has helped. However, goaltending can only do so much when you can't score goals and struggle with faceoffs. So I hope that, there are a lot of people who know what they're doing ahead of the draft next month, but I hope that everyone kind of remembers it's not about the immediate future or the immediate fix. We're talking 2 to 3 years down the road, and the stars just have to align. They do. And I'm curious to see, I think Rasmus Andersson will be traded before the draft. Very similar to how I thought Jacob Markstrom was going to be traded before the draft, but I think this one actually happens. And the Flames are able to capitalize on a first-round pick. But coming up next, we're going to talk about evaluating the Flames roster ahead of free agency and really what they need to do in order to take this step forward, even if it means stepping back. Coming up next on Locked On Flames. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty's Black Ops 6 and Avowed, as easily as you would stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/FireTV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Unlimited subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Generation. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy, just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored job posts put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. We've all been in a spot where you need the right hire at the right time, which really means like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. Every year, I worry about free agency with the Flames because you never know what actually might happen. Thankfully, the Flames don't have any big names hitting the market this year, and that's really Toronto's problem with Mitch Marner. But I worry about the Flames going out and signing more Tyson Berry-esque contracts. I worry about them signing, 7-year deals with players who don't need to be signed for 7 years. However, that era feels behind us now. I think Craig Conroy has the reins and has them under control. I think that there is a much clearer picture than there was with Treliving at the helm. But let's talk about what the Flames need to do. Let's be honest. It is to get younger. I think the biggest thing that they need to do is integrate more of their younger players. I think that this is the thing we always talk about with the Flames, right? Like, oh, they still want to stay competitive, but they also want to get younger, but they don't allow themselves to take a step back in order for that to happen. I don't think you need to re-sign Hanley. Maybe back to his original role as a 6th or 7th defenseman, sure. I don't really see I guess maybe Justin Kirkland could come back, but personally, I don't think that's the right move. I mean, maybe on a 2-way deal. I think that would make the most sense, if at all. I don't think you need to re-sign Anthony Mantha. And I think that if you're going to re-sign Kevin Rooney for that 4th line center role, it should only be on an intermittent basis. You need to have some of your younger players, like a Rory Currens, come in and play that role. They need to start integrating these young forwards and defensemen into this lineup. I don't care if they're not 2 points out of a wild card spot at the last game of the season. Quite frankly, I don't care. I want to see this team take positive steps forward in terms of player development. I don't want to have a situation where, a player like a Matthew Phillips situation where, the Flames didn't really give him a shot at the NHL level, even though he was consistently leading the Wranglers and the Stockton Heat in scoring. They never gave him a true chance. And I do wonder what could have happened had his development looked different for the Flames. What would have happened if he had seen NHL action when he was on a hot streak? And I think really, again, the biggest thing is integrating these younger players. And you have to, all these guys talk about knowing how it's a business, especially the veterans. I'm sure in a way they expect it. So why don't we just wash our hands of it and either bring in younger players through free agency or trades or your own system and make it happen. There are players in the Flames organization that should be getting long, hard looks at the NHL level because you're never you can't write them off if you don't see them at the NHL. But the longer that the players just sit in your AHL system and play and play and play, you are wasting time in not having them, make that jump to the NHL. It doesn't have to be like a full season all at once, but to test the waters. I don't think it's worth the risk of delaying development just to stay competitive. And is it truly even staying competitive if you finish where the Flames finished this year? It's just a thought, just some food for thought. I don't know. And again, you need to be giving players like Hunter Brustewicz, Rory Currens, Jeremy Poirier ice time. Those are just a few players off the top of my head that are deserving of ice time. You can't write off Sam Honzek yet, so let's find a spot for him. You need to turn over a new leaf and get these kids in. It's the only way you are going to properly be able to make a difference and really exercise all your options as an organization. But coming up next, we're going to talk about locking up some players long term and really what does Craig Conroy have to lose with a long-term Dustin Wolf contract. The NBA and NHL playoffs are in full swing, and every night they deliver highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-tying shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and puck drop and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I personally would bet on a Connor McDavid anytime goal. Just an idea. I would also probably pick the Leafs for the money line. Just it seems fairly obvious and fairly easy, right? New to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at JustBelmosto. It has been almost a week, since Matt Coronado signed his 7-year extension with the Calgary Flames. 7 years. So you can go and get yourself a Matt Coronado jersey this offseason and have it ready for the home opener. But what about some of these other players? Let's talk about the first one, Connor Zary. Connor Zary is a restricted free agent this summer, and the Flames have an option. Do they put all their eggs in this basket with a long-term deal, even though, he dealt with some pretty serious injuries this season and has dealt with injuries in the past? Or are you just going to, bridge the gap? Are you okay doing a bridge deal? How does the other side feel about doing a bridge deal? And are you concerned about his injuries at all? I think it is very silly to call a player injury prone because accidents happen. It's not like he is stepping out in front of a truck every 6 weeks and breaking a leg or something like that. Sometimes accidents just happen and injuries happen. No one, I have a very difficult time calling Connor Zary injury prone when re-injuring his knee came in a situation where Mikko Rantanen bulldozed into him, like, because he couldn't skate, like he fell and was just rolling on the ice. I don't think that is fair. If it were a situation where he was maybe, let's say like a Jack Hughes situation, right? Jack Hughes is not necessarily built very muscularly, so he doesn't have a lot protecting his shoulders. I think that is a situation where you might look at that and say, yeah, I know he's kind of injury prone. I look at Matt Coronado, who has put on some muscle, or how you see players kind of bulk up and once they start playing at the NHL level because they are playing more often. They have access to fantastic nutritionists. They're not eating, McDonald's because they're in the WHL, just driving from city to city, and things like that. But do you also want to risk him walking in free agency in 3 to 4 years when this contract's up? I don't know if you can really use the Matthew Tkachuk situation here as them avoiding a bridge deal the same way you did with same way everyone really did with Matt Coronado, because I think, Matt Coronado stayed healthy all season. And I think that's really the biggest thing is, are they willing to miss Zary for, a quarter of the season, maybe once every other year? Like, you have to take these things into consideration. I don't necessarily think it's always the right answer, but personally, I think a bridge deal makes sense. But I'm also like fully team long-term contract for Zary. But I do feel like this is going to go to a bridge deal. Might be a longer bridge deal, like a 4 to 5 year instead of 3, like 2 to 3. Morgan Frost is also an RFA. Is he a player that you want to lock up long-term, or are you bridging him 2 to 3 years to bring him to UFA status as a 27-year-old? Did you like what you saw enough in the sample size he had as a Flame to commit to the next 7 years? And what about Kevin Ball? What are you doing? What are you doing there? Dustin Wolf is eligible for an extension on July 1st. Are you going to let him run the show this summer, or do you wait for next summer when you're under more of a time crunch? I think that with Kevin Ball, you have to look at the other defensive players around you and in your current depth chart. I think 4 to 5 years, again, makes sense for Kevin Ball. I don't like handing out 7-year contracts, 6 or 7 year contracts to defensemen. It stresses me out. But if you have to, you have to. Like if Zane Parekh, whatever, you could get a lifetime contract if you wanted to. I don't care what the CBA says. But I think that makes the most sense. I think that signing Dustin Wolf to a long-term deal either this summer or next summer with a blank check is the perfect idea. At the end of the day, all of these goals are to piece together a successful competitive team. You need to put together a competitive contending team. And it's a work in progress. It does not happen overnight. It does not. But that will do it for me this week on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for hanging out. I hope you have had a fantastic week, and hopefully your spring is going well, your allergies aren't killing you too much, and you are enjoying playoff hockey. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And until next time.